This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins, and thanks for joining us. I have a feeling that I know more and more people are downloading the show, but it's like over the past 10 or so episodes, just more and more people kind of join up and start a dialogue on Twitter and start emailing, and I don't know, it's just great. And if it's, maybe you've been a long-time listener and maybe you're just all of a sudden now like, yo, I want to talk, which is fine. But I don't know. It's a good feeling, and I appreciate the download and the time spent. Because let's be honest, there's so much other stuff you could be doing right now, but you're not. You're hanging out, and that's awesome. Anyways, my guest today is Mr. Tommy Green. He is a vocalist for a metal hardcore band called Sleeping Giant, who is I wouldn't even call them a band. They're a ministry, straight up. And if you are at all interested in religion, and not even so much like Christianity, but just religion in general, spirituality, all that sort of stuff, this episode is made specifically for you. Because, oh man, we go deep. It's really interesting. Not to mention, and even if you don't care about religion at all, the conversation in and of itself is awesome because Tommy has a very, very intriguing story. So let's get some business out of the way, because there's something very important that you as a consumer of podcasts need to know about. So there's something that's happening right now. For any of you that pay attention to the technology industry as a whole, has maybe heard about this, but basically what's happening, so some of the largest podcasts in the game, from Adam Carolla's network to Mark Maron's podcast and a bunch of other people, even This American Life, they have been, sent some cease and desist letters in the past. But now Adam Carolla in particular is getting sued by this company named Personal Audio, which basically saying they have the claim for podcasting in general, and they need to pay. When I say they, Adam Carolla has to pay this company called Personal Audio either a licensing fee or basically they are what is called a patent troll. So these are people that get patents and then go out there and sue people, knowing that it's really, really expensive to take this to court, put this in litigation. And so this is now affecting the podcasting world, because basically if Adam Carolla isn't successful in taking these people to court and having the support of the podcast community, it's going to be a trickle-down effect. All they're going to do is just start targeting number 2 on the list, number 3 on the list. And obviously, this podcast is nowhere near as big as those, but we have a sizable audience. And if all of a sudden I have to start paying out, they're asking for $3 million. That's what they're asking for from Adam Carolla. It's predatory. It's awful. It shouldn't happen, because these are people, podcasts, even if you're a extremely large podcast, you are making a living off of it, but it's not like you are some multimedia conglomerate. These are people that have stepped away from all of the traditional mediums of broadcasting and are doing it on their own because that's what they want to do. So anyways, what I want you to do is go to fundanything.com/patent troll, or you can just Google Adam Carolla patent troll. What he's trying to do is he needs to raise $1.5 million, which sounds insane that he needs to raise that much money. But that is how much money it takes in order to take this to court. While obviously you could look at it and be like, oh, Adam's a millionaire already. He clearly has done well for himself. But to all of a sudden pony up $1.5 million just to get this in court, that's rough. So needless to say, I am a huge supporter of this. I'm just doing this because I love the medium and I think that this should be untouched by this patent troll. So, it just gets my blood boiling. So go there. You'll find a little informational video that will explain this a little more in depth, but it's something that I'm very passionate about and I want you to be aware of as well. So anyways, enough of that. Propertyofzach.com. Visit them. Review the show. Go to iTunes. Type some sentences or drop some stars for the show. It makes us look good, and I appreciate that. And email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And you can hit us on Twitter at 100 Words Podcast. I forget the handle. Anyways, you can find us on Twitter pretty easily. Visit the website, 100wordspodcast.com. And I'm going to start to integrate a little more music recommendations here in the future, because I've gotten a lot of response from many people who have listened to the show pretty regularly, and they want that. They want that as a regular part. So I'm reaching out to a few people, past guests of the show, and other people who I trust their musical opinion. And so we're going to start getting some of that stuff. And I've also noticed people emailing me links of their own band to check out, which is cool. And I appreciate that. I think in the future, I may start trying to integrate that as far as like a spotlight, where it's like, yo, this was actually pretty good. But don't have your feelings hurt. If you send me something and I don't talk about it, please don't be like, dude, Ray, you're the worst person ever. I sent you this and you didn't listen to it. Clearly, this is a transactional relationship. I can't promise you will get some coverage, but that is just something I'm toying around with as well. So anyways, Tommy Green, the vocalist for Sleeping Giant, I met him a few years ago, and it was just one of those things where he's such a positive person and he has such conviction about him. Not only his religion, but just in the way that he lives his life. I don't know. He's a very inspiring person. Regardless if you think religion is crap or what you live by, you will find knowledge in Tommy's experience. And so he was out here finishing up vocals for his band's record that's coming out sometime in the near future. And I met him at our mutual friend's house and where he is recording. And we chopped it up. We spoke for just over an hour, and this is what transpired. So I will talk to you afterwards, okay? Bye. I usually start these things off with just like my own personal like entry point or introduction to your music, that sort of stuff.
Good.
I think we met each other for the very first time. I think it was a New England Metal and Hardcore Festival. I mean, I have no idea what year, but you guys were playing. So I mean, it was probably like maybe I was still at Century Media, so I think it was like maybe 2000, I don't know, 7-ish, 6-ish, I can't remember exactly. I was already aware of the band prior to that. I wasn't familiar with the music beyond just like being aware that like, oh yeah, you're a band, you exist.
There's a band, yeah.
Right. Yeah, because we met, and it was like we had an opportunity to actually converse for a minute, because I think, I want to say we were trying to like talk to you guys about doing something from a professional perspective. I can't remember who was like managing you at the time, whatever, but there was an interest there to be like, oh, that'd be cool to like work with them. But I just remember talking to you and being like, you're on the level, like just immediately being like, because like I don't know about you, like when you first, I mean I know that sounds so basic because
but I know what you're saying,
like because you meet some people and you're instantaneously and this doesn't happen for everybody, but like you meet a person and you're instantaneously either drawn to them or like, oh okay, that's where they are, like that's fine, like
and there we are,
right, and then that's all you needed to have that interaction. But it was. For you, it was definitely like, oh no, like you're not like I really had no preconceived notions as far as like, oh dude, are we immediately going to be witness to here? Are we going to be? Because there going to be any of
this thing, yes,
right?
Absolutely.
But there wasn't any of that, and I was like, oh, that was cool, and so like it set me off in the right perspective to dive into your music at a more regular level and like understand you more just on having that obvious like simple interaction. The conception for you and obviously the band in general is the fact that there's a lot of weight into getting to know not only you as a person, but then obviously you as a minister, you as a frontman for a band, that sort of stuff. And it's like people will carry a lot of stuff into meeting you. And do you find yourself having to battle a lot of those like, oh, here's all these preconceived notions that I got to kind of tear down with certain people if you meet them in certain contexts?
I think in general, I think I've based more of like.
I know it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing
because I'm trying to think of what goes on. I think what's been interesting is that I feel like the real legacy of what we've been doing will be if band dudes, if people that are in bands, if our peers think we're okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like if our peers think we're okay, then that's basically it. A lot of the other kids they'll basically use, the audience will use you for what they need.
Right.
And so and sometimes it's really amazing. I mean, I know for a fact that there's people that have attributed our band, just like any band, like there's, like I was saying, we're talking about Steve
Brodsky,
from Cave In, and I'm like, that record, literally, I was in the midst of like this crazy, horrible part of my life. I was like living in an affair. I was living in an affair, and I bought Until Your Heart Stops.
Right.
Because it had been a while since I really felt like I'd connected with some. I'm trying to think of the last record before that.
Yeah.
It might have been like an ISIS record or something. You know what? Dude, there was a Hydra Head comp that I got. Anyway, it had been a while since I really heard a band that I was like, oh. And I was walking out, and at that point in Salt Lake City, there was a dude that lives out here named Alvaz, but he was singing for a band called The Lazarus Project. And that had just kind of started popping off that summer. And I remember I met with the guitarist, I think his name was Jason, and he used to be the guitarist for Clear years and years ago.
X Clear X, right?
Yeah, the sickness must end.
I know,
that whole deal. So I ran into him, and he was like, yeah, I'm playing for this band, like. And I remember just talking to him, and in the conversation, for some reason, Cave In came up. And then I went in and got the CD. And I got home, and I remember I kind of hid in that record for a while. And so I think in general, I would say that is Seek One, like that. There's this little calm song right now.
Right.
I put my wife as a yoga instructor, and I put it on her playlist. I get to be her DJ.
Oh, nice.
And so I put that on one of her like slower deals.
Right.
So there's little songs like that actually help give life, I think, to me. And so people have literally said, like, I was literally going to commit suicide. I was really going to kill myself. I listened to your record. Some crazy thing happens.
Right.
And so I know there's really good things that have happened. But then there's also people that will show up and they use my band to hate people or hate the world or be religious. Like, we would call them like religiotards. Like, they're so goofy that you're like, you need the spiritual gift of being a normal human being for a minute. Like, that's like what we'd say, you know?
Yeah.
So I know that people use your band for whatever they need at the time, but
I like the way you put that, because essentially you view what you're creating from a musical perspective and a lyrical perspective. Like you said, like, it's because once you put something out in the world, like, you don't control it.
You can't control what people do with it.
And so I like the way that you're just like, if our peers think that we're like doing something as like, if there's validation from that perspective, like, then we've done our.
Because I feel like, you know, we won't live for weeks on end with every kid that comes to a show, but we will live for weeks on end with some of the bands we go out with. And I know that there's a lot of stigma around Christian hardcore kids. There's a lot of stigma around straight edge kids. I mean, whatever it is, there's stigma,
whatever label,
whatever it is that people ascribe to you. And so I think we've gone out on tour, and I know that dudes have showed up, and I think in general they were wondering what they were going to get as well. And I think even if we didn't do a very good job of representing Christ the way that I'd like to, even to myself, like, I swear I say cuss words way too much. I know I don't do a perfect job of representing him in my behavior. But I really hope that our character on some level is still there, that it says something that's about acceptance and it breaks some stuff down. But I know for a fact we get asked by like Christian people all the time. We'll be like, do these Christian festivals, they're like, what are your favorite tours? And like, our favorite tours are with like all of these like satanic bands that are like our favorite people on the tour. So that's what I feel like, if it's the people that you live with day in, if they think you're all right when they meet you, or you walk away and most people are like, oh, they were cool, like, then that's probably what's going to matter most, because the other people are just going to see you for 28 minutes on stage. You know, when I pray for a lot of kids at the end of our show, so I'll stay as long as I need to pray for people, and so I know I'm there personally to minister to people. But
right.
For the most part, they're only getting like a small window.
Well, it's a transactional relationship. Like, kids are purchasing a ticket to a show, and they are being entertained, and there's so many different levels of expectations of entertainment. Like, sometimes people are going there to have that sort of, like, that moment that you're saying, that sort of epiphany moment. And then there's other times where it's just like, oh, dude, I just want to mosh.
A mosh, and there's cool. There's sick breakdown, bro.
Right. You hit on something that I was going to bring up later, but it's a perfect time where the pressure that I'm sure you feel, like, in obviously being self-aware of the example that you lead out there versus the way that people perceive, a quote unquote typical Christian, like, is it a typical Christian to be? Because there's obviously where it's like, if you swear in front of a person who's like, look, can't wait to poke holes in what you are and what you do.
Absolutely, man.
Like, so is it one of those things where it's like you feel that sort of and not even pressure from like anybody else, but just that sort of internal pressure?
Absolutely. Well, because I realized it, because I was sharing, like, I talked to this dude, actually, this old dude from New Jersey, who's like a Christian dude, and he's an old Syracuse guy.
Okay.
I believe he was in Abnegation.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah.
Okay, but I can't... Anyways,
sure.
But we talked about it, and I remember that he saw me in the midst of last summer, and last summer the band was going through all sorts of upheaval.
Right.
Not even in a band way necessarily. It was hard to manage, but like relationships were kind of all over the place. And
sure.
Me and Rookie were basically flying to festivals and meeting up with dudes to fill in. It was like to complete the things we said we were going to do.
Right.
And so I remember just being so frustrated, feeling really like almost like a caged animal. Like I couldn't tell who my friends were.
Of course.
And like weird. And so I remember just being frustrated and being normal and kind of talking to this dude and swearing. His daughter's there. I so blew it.
Right.
He hit me up later because I was on my YouTube little Devo thing. And I'm like, you guys, I gotta let you know. Like, but I remember telling people in the video, I was like, just to be honest with you guys, like, I know that my ability to communicate is what I think is my gift is.
Right.
And so when I met God, I was like, I've used my voice for everything else. Whether it was like in high school, I started a group. I started a group with a friend of mine called the Satanic Youth Organization because we were too young to join the Church of Satan. Can you believe it? Anyway, so I just it was like the thing of like veganism, like being for animal rights and being straight edge and I mean just in a lot of ways in Salt Lake City when I first became part of the scene, dude, that was a high time in that place. It was real rebellion. Like, there were trucks exploding. Like
of course.
we were on terrorist watch lists. Like my friends had their phones tapped. Like we were getting pulled over by unmarked cars. Like it was a crazy time, and I remember feeling really a part of something. Yeah. And so I remember feeling like, oh, this is it. It's me against everyone else, and I really felt that. Right. And so it's interesting because then when life just totally fell apart, and I really felt like this divine thing happen, and I felt almost like I finally got invaded by something outside of me. I was like, what the heck? Yeah. So when I was like in this journey, I remember feeling like I read this story about the way that like Jesus teaching, he's like, hey, these dudes are given this investment or talent or money, and they turn around and make a good deposit on it, or they multiply it, and he comes back and he's like, good job, I gave you 3, you came back with 6, that's awesome. Right. Other dude's like, I gave you 6, you came back with 12, that's amazing. And the third guy's like, I knew you were hard and I was afraid of you, so I took it and I hid it.
Yeah, I didn't do anything with it.
And he's like, you missed it. And that's the part where I was reading, I was like, well, I know my voice, man. Like, I've given it to everything else, so I'll just give it to you. Right. You can have it. And so that's the part where I was telling people in the video, I'm like, I know that my ability to communicate is what I think is the gift, and it's my love language. Like, I really want to encourage people. So when I use, like, profanity and I get like all angry, I'm really abusing the gift, and I'm like, I told him, I'm like, I say pray words and I say cuss words, I'm sorry, like I will work on it, like I'm just trying to like be honest about it. So I feel that in myself, like, and when I talk to Christian people, that literally it's something that they appreciate, and in the Bible even, it's like, don't let a bunch of profanity come out of your mouth. Like the reason Christians don't do it is because they're trying to obey the Bible. Right. So I'm not trying to be that guy that's like, forget the Bible, bro, just do what you feel. Like, So I feel that for sure, but then I also have a responsibility in love to other people to honor them. So it's why I traditionally, I mean, it'll be a really weird day if I ever just blow it and say like cuss words from stage or something. Like, I really do try to do the best I can to manage.
Within the context of what, no, I totally
So that's where I feel pressure mostly. I don't feel like most... If kids that aren't Christians that we're on the road with like hate us and talk crap behind us, like I don't think they ever really say much to our face. Right. And I don't know if they necessarily try to be that critical of us unless we piss them off for some reason. Right. So I don't hear a lot.
They're kind of off in the corner, and that's fine. They're like they've judged.
Christians are more like, hey, you are a Christian, and so I will tell you exactly what I think. And I'm like, oh, I know, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's where I feel that.
Right. So were you born and raised in Salt Lake City?
No, I was born in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I moved with my family quite a bit. They went through divorce. My mom and dad went through divorce when I was like, I think maybe, but I'm going to say between 3 and 5. I can't remember. So we moved from San Francisco to St. Louis. Okay. And that's when my parents split up. My dad stayed in St. Louis, and my mom and me moved back to Northern California. Okay. Moved around Northern California and was in the Bay Area.
Did you have brothers and sisters at the time too, or was it just you and your mom?
Literally, when I was 6, my dad and my stepmom, had my little brother.
Sure.
And so I have 2 little brothers with my dad and my stepmom, and they're like some of my best friends. And then I moved to Washington State with my mom and my stepdad. And so I visit my dad and in my family with my dad in the summers. And so that was like my whole life. It was like a double kid. I was like with my mom and my stepdad, and they were like these devout like Baptist people.
Okay.
And then I go stay with my dad, who's like a traditional like Irish Catholic family, which means we don't go to church. We just don't do it. But there's plenty of drinking. There's lots of drinking.
Right.
So it was just this different culture each summer. So my brothers grew up in St. Louis, and I moved around a bunch with my mom and my stepdad. So I lived in Washington State and California, and then St. Louis, and then we moved to Salt Lake City from Washington. But my dad had moved to Salt Lake City from St. Louis with the railroad because he drives trains. He drove trains for Union Pacific. So he was a train guy, and UP was in St. Louis, and then he got a job as an engineer and moved to Salt Lake. So I went and visited him a summer in Salt Lake, and then went back to Washington. And at the end of that year, for some reason, my stepdad's job transferred him to Salt Lake City.
That's so
I ended
weird.
up living in Salt Lake City with my mom and my dad in the same town for the first time since I was like 4.
Right. And how old are you when both of those worlds collide?
Sophomore. I was a sophomore in high school. So I moved out as a sophomore from Washington, super depressed, and because I didn't live in places for very long. Like my stepdad was in school or was in ministry, and so we would just move. And I'm realizing that we just moved a lot. It was about once a year. We were just somewhere else.
Yeah, you're transplanted. So you had no opportunity to actually like cultivate any relationships.
Long term. It was like always a do-over. I'd go to visit my dad. I'd come back and we were in some new spot. And that was just how it felt a lot.
Yeah.
But that was real. That was actually what it was. But that's how it felt. And that was cool. I was pretty social, so I could...
Yeah, you could kind of jump into whatever.
Cool. Yeah, a new place. But we lived in Washington for like 4 years, and that was the longest in that city that we've been. And I really like loved it up there.
Sure.
I missed the scene. I didn't know about any of that. I moved to Salt Lake City as a sophomore and was just so messed up that I was drinking. I would drink by myself, and I hated it. I didn't want to be there.
Was that a direct reaction to you moving there?
Yeah, the people were awesome, but I was just like, this sucks. Like, I didn't want to be there. My dream was to live in Seattle and be a bike messenger, and like that was my deal.
You're like, that was my goal.
Because I lived in Puyallup, which is this little town like south of Seattle, like outside of Tacoma.
Oh, okay.
And so I lived there, and we would go into the city, and that was during the height of like the alternative movement.
Oh yeah.
That was what turned me on to music.
So it was like mid 90s is when you were there, so you were seeing a lot of that hit.
92, 93,
oh,
94, like right in the middle of it. Like,
oh, yeah.
And so there was just great things happening, and it was so much fun to be up there. And so my dream was to get into the city. We would only make it into the city like every so often.
Sure.
But I just remember like just loving it. So that was my goal, was to get to Seattle. And so when we moved in high school, I was just like, where the heck are we? Like, I liked the city. It was fine. I liked to snowboard at that point. So I was like, well, that's cool. But I just started getting really sad. Well, that was the first time I ever heard about straight edge kids, because there was like a super violent culture.
Totally.
It was way militant, and there was a lot of... My friends were all stoner kids, and so they would like openly talk about, like, straight edge kids, and we'll fucking fight them. And like, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like...
Had you even at that point?
I had no idea,
dude. So you're dropped into this like powder keg.
I read a hit parader in Washington that showcased Shelter, and that was the only thing I had read that was like they're Krishna core. What the heck?
Is this? Yeah,
it sounds cool, whatever. But I was more into like Helmet and the Deftones and like that, dude, I just really, and it was like that weird time. I was in 6th grade. I think I heard Crass and the Dead Kennedys and Nirvana all in the same year. And I was mostly into hip-hop up until that point. And I would have to steal it because my parents didn't want me to listen to music.
Okay, yeah. That was my next question.
It was really rigid. Right. They wouldn't let me go there. So I would steal tapes or tape like Slick Rick on like a different tape and like hide it. Like that kind of thing, Right. So what I heard, I can remember it. I was at my friend Ryan Cromer's house, and I heard a Nirvana song on the radio. It was like cheesy as that is, but I was blown away that they wrote all their own music. And it was like powerful. And I was like, this is so awesome. And I wanted to play. And so I started playing drums when I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
But they wouldn't let me, I had to sneak out to go to like listen to music and stuff. It was just bad.
Wow. Yeah, you were on lockdown.
I really was. Like, and because of their value system and because Christian music sucks, dude. It sucks. It's always like 15 years behind anything. It's always copying. So there was a couple grunge rock bands that were actually now there was two that one was called Soul Food, and they were almost like a groovy like 70s like grunge distortion band.
Okay.
Not even that heavy or anything, but like they would play a show and it was like a Christian show, but you could stage that. I mean, kids would just go off.
Okay.
And there was a dude named Aaron Sprinkle, and he's a producer with He was in a band called Poor Old Lou. And they were in Seattle. My first show I was allowed to go to in like 7th grade was Soul Food and Poor Old Lou at the King Theater in Seattle. And I remember the minute it started, everyone started stage diving, and I was like, yes!
You're like, I'm here.
I just went the whole time, and I was like, yes! Finally!
Yeah.
So anyways, but that was my introduction, was like punk rock. It was Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death. And it was, God, I'm trying to think, but it was just, that was when music came alive, where I was like, people do.
We're like, yeah, you found something, right?
Yeah,
right,
there was dudes. What was it? Pill. There was a bunch of friends I had that were just all these alternative kids, and they were like stoned and depressed and messed up, and I just loved them. I was like, yeah, these are my people.
And that was in Seattle still. Okay,
so Petty Bone is in Undertow. Yep. I didn't know about it. There was one straight edge kid in my junior high, and he was a year older than me, and I barely remember him, but I knew there was something different about him, but I didn't know what he was connected to.
Sure.
And so then when I get to Salt Lake, people start talking about like the scene, and I was like, or they start talking about straight edge kids and just how violent they are, and like kids challenging each other. And I remember a friend of mine like tried to fight some dudes and just got the shit kicked out of him.
Right.
Bad. And I was like, what is going on?
Totally.
Well, I ended up, my family was just really into substances and that kind of thing. And there was a party, and there was a party at my dad's house, and he had a bunch of his friends over. Okay. And he had a friend over that was there, and it was basically like, I lived in, it was a 2-day drunk for me. I was probably a sophomore, and I just used the opportunity to get drunk as I could. Right. And he had a friend there that had snuff. The snuff had black tar heroin in it or something. I snorted heroin on accident. Right. Because I thought it was something else. And I ended up just sick and like way messed up. And I was like, I would never have done that if I didn't think it was cool. I wouldn't think it was cool if it wasn't modeled as cool for me. Right. I have got to like get out of this. Because in 7th grade in Washington, because of some of the music and some of that stuff, I ended up running away and moved out with some friends. Like I left and stayed with my friend's family. We like robbed convenience stores for cigarettes to sell for like lunch money. I mean, it was like the worst thing ever. My daughter's like 13, and we had this conversation like a week ago, and she's like, I feel like you think I'm someone that I'm not or something. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, Bear, let me tell you about what I was doing when I was your age. Because you're in 8th grade right now. When I was in 8th grade, I was like living away from my family, doing illegal drugs, stealing stuff from people, selling. I'm like, let me tell you how awesome you are compared to me, and how you have to like keep going. Like, So, anyways,
so did you find, was the reason that you ran away, was that all tied up in the fact that you just felt
music?
You were oppressed.
I felt so like
there was no choice.
There was nothing. And I kept telling them, I was like, listen, you guys, like, I know you guys want me to like your God and everything, but like, I hate it. Right. This doesn't work. I just couldn't hear it. And my poor mom, like, since then we've talked about it a bunch, and she's just apologized. She's like, it's crazy because the minute they like slacked off, I stopped doing drugs.
They're like, just give us a little rope.
Whatever you're gonna do. And I was like, okay, I need to get straight right now. So I had 2 or 3 friends that were actually straight edge kids that I knew were part of the scene. Yeah, and they were vegan, and they were just straight edge kids, but they really weren't violent. And I just needed to get clear.
Of course.
And so I started hanging out with them because I was just like, I was genuinely intrigued by the fact that these dudes were like really proud of the fact that they didn't do drugs. Like, they were really into like good music, and I was like, the first record that I heard from like straight edge kids, my friend Nate let me borrow a record by a band from Germany called Acme.
Of course.
To Reduce the Choir to One Soloist. And I was like, that was the most brutal thing I'd ever heard in my life. And I was like, oh no, like, that's what you listen to? Yeah. That was unreal. So a year later, I ended up getting kind of cleaned up. I just stopped. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I started hanging out with my friend Nate, and I showed up at his doorstep, and I was like, listen, man, I don't have any friends that aren't kind of into this. And if I say I'm like drug free, I'm just going to hang out, I will totally go back to doing stuff. Can I just like hang out with you? Like, can I please hang out with you? Sure. And so he took me, we just hung out, and he would listen to like God, what did we listen to? We just listened to everything. We listened to a lot of 108, and we listened to Into Another, and he took me to my first show like a couple weeks later, and I remember it was Catharsis and Clear, and this band Trip Hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being so intrigued because I really felt afraid. Like
Sure.
you walk into the show and it was like
Yeah.
everyone. But I also realized that it was in the midst of the first show I was supposed to go to, Hatebreed and Despair.
Oh, yeah,
at
yeah.
the Hula Hut. Do you remember that tour?
I remember that tour.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was the first show I was supposed to go to, and there was such crazy beef because these dudes that were roped up in these animal rights things had ratted on a couple other kids and then bailed. And so there was huge division. So at that show, 3 kids got stabbed. That was the first show I was supposed to go to. And I remember I was supposed to meet up with some kids that I met through like the Victory message board or something. I was just like, they were like, yeah, what's your name? And I was like, yeah, I'm just living in Salt Lake. I've never really been to a show, but you guys are like drug free. It'd be fun to hang out with kids that like music that won't get me into trouble.
Right.
Like, yeah, come, man. So I was like, sure. So I was supposed to go. I ended up going like wakeboarding, and I missed my ride.
Okay.
And so the next day, I'm in like a Gray Whale CD
Oh,
store.
yeah.
And Jared, I think the singer from Trip Hammer, walked in, and they're like, how was that show last night? And he was like, bad, dude. Like 3 kids got stabbed. And I was like...
Yeah, you're like, well, it's a good thing. Good thing I didn't go.
Okay. So anyway, so that was my deal. So the first show I ended up going to was Catharsis and Clear, but that was in the wake of some of that stuff. So I remember 2 specific times we were hanging out, and like the whole show emptied out because there was these fights.
Something happening.
Yeah, some dude, just trying to square stuff up, and it was such a violent. It was really a different time.
Oh,
and
it totally
I think about it a lot.
Yeah.
I just
Well,
think about it a lot.
it's really tough to put in context because it's like, everybody waxes nostalgic about, like the whatever, late 70s, early 80s, like, Black Flag and, LA Punk, and like everybody is going to think whatever time that they grew up in like was, extremely violent or whatever. But like, so it's hard to paint the whole context, but it's like, I distinctly remember it's like, being like living in Southern California when all that stuff was happening in Salt Lake City, it bled over to here to where it's like, I distinctly remember like playing certain shows, playing a show in Vegas and then going out there and saying, oh, the Salt Lake City kids are coming. And just being like,
everyone is on, and you can read them. Exactly when they walk in the room.
Totally,
it's still
the
that
energy
way.
changes.
All of my friends will show up to a show, and it's like, oh.
And it's so it's so difficult to explain that to someone that's like, you're just dropping, it's a whatever, like a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid is going to have no context for it. Just they're like, oh, maybe like, oh, Salt Lake was violent, but it's just like, no, like it changed energy in rooms. Like it was crazy.
It's a crazy thing. It's one of those things where I try to think back on it, and I watched the documentary that was filmed because Mick from 18 Visions, he just passed away.
He did, yeah.
And I really liked him. Like,
Yeah.
and I was a young kid, and he was nice to me.
Totally.
And I was used to thinking dudes in bands were different.
Of course.
And so when I first got in the hardcore scene, I remember running into Jason and Mick and some dudes at this Dollar movie, Sean McClarty, and the dudes from Clear. And I remember looking at them and going like, hey, my name's Tommy. And I'd introduced myself to them before. And I was like, my name's Tom. And they were like, yeah, I remember. And I was like, oh, and they were just normal. And I was like, oh, thanks for being nice, man. So I just remember thinking, I really like these guys.
Right.
Thanks for being kind to me. But like, there was just it's such a different deal. And I think about it and go like, I watched a documentary that they filmed, they put together in 1997.
Okay.
And it's that season. And I have to be honest, like I watched it and I cried because I was like, honestly, what the fuck was I so attracted to?
Sure.
It was so depressed and like broken. And I was like, why did I go all in for that?
Right. Well,
It was a weird thing.
I think, just from as an outsider looking in, obviously not living there, I think it was one of those things where it's like once people, because whatever social movement people are a part of, because it has to escalate. It has to keep getting higher, and then once you get to a point where things get real, as in people appear on America's Most Wanted, like the FBI, everything you were mentioning. Once it hits that level, that's when it's going to fracture, splinter across, and you're going to have these people who are trying, not comparing them to gangs, but it's like people are going to be trying to grab for power. Like there's such a weird dynamic in a scene.
It's insane.
That was really never meant to house that sort of atmosphere.
Dude, it was insane.
Right.
I literally just remember thinking, I'm so glad that I'm from there. I'm glad that that's like where I came from. Most of my close friends that I've had for years are still very much like a part of that culture, even though we're all like grown up now. And it's a different deal. And I'm so glad it's a different deal.
Oh,
I'm so glad it's not what that was. Like,
it's evolved past that,
I don't look back and go like, man, I wish you guys it was like this. I don't, dude. Dudes died. Kids went to prison. Like, it was not a good time.
Right,
like,
right.
It wasn't good. It was just pissed off.
Right.
Hatred.
It informs who you are today, obviously. But like you said,
that's what I'm going to do. I look at it and think of my son, and we played a show in Salt Lake a while ago, SG did, on a benefit, and I think I just looked at my friends. All my friends are in this room, and I'm like, you guys, like, I love you, and I love this scene, but I don't want my son to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. Like, when I think of Rada, I'm like, I'd like for him to just be more normal than me a little bit. I want him to, like, go to school and have friends and, like, become successful and go way further than I did. And I needed family. Right. And I needed a gang with the soundtrack.
Right.
And that's what it was. Like, I was like, I needed people that were as pissed off as I was.
Sure.
That would show me something. And then when I saw it, I was like, you know what? There's a part of this that's not even me.
Right.
And I respect and I fear some of them in the best way possible. Like, you guys are real people. I'm glad to be a part of your life, but there's a part of me that's like, dang, if I was Rada, I would fight to keep him away from some of that stuff, because it's like that thing, the quote at the beginning of the town where I'm like, I'm glad to be from Charleston. It ruined my life, but I love it. Like, there's a part of it where I feel like I wonder what it taught me that I was never supposed to learn.
Right, right.
And I say that just to go, I'm still there. Like, I will be there.
Right.
You know, whatever.
That's you. Yeah.
And it's still a part of who I am. But like, I just think about it and go, man, I'm not nostalgic about it.
Yeah.
No, I look back with fondness. I look forward and I'm like, I'm really glad that like young kids think whatever they think.
Right.
Because it's like, you have no idea.
Right. And not like an old guy get off my lawn sort of thing, but like, I'm excited that you can experience this from a more pure level.
Without the fear.
Yeah.
Because when fear hits a scene, either because of like crew drama or because of like real stuff where dudes start messing with drug money and like bad stuff starts happening, it's like, I'm glad you get to just go to a show, and the biggest problem is that maybe some dudes are pissed and you're gonna have a fist fight.
Right. Like, this huge cloud of darkness that descends, and it's like, it permeates into every aspect of that of everyone's life that comes to a show.
Sorry, that makes sense.
No,
right?
it's okay? Dude, it's perfect.
I was just thinking about that.
That's
where I heard of Salt Lake, and that's my introduction was hanging out with people that I felt like were safe, and I was really attracted to the violent part of it, because I know I'm like a violent person. I know I'm like a fighter, and that's cool. And I'm honored to have like shared life with some of those dudes. But my introduction was like, I just needed safety. I needed some people that were going to help me stay off drugs.
Right, and that was the environment in which you. I mean, because
that was it. That was
who knows? I mean, as like you said, as bad as that, as quote unquote bad as that experience was, as far as you looking back on it. Who knows where you could have ended up if you went a different direction.
I'm grateful to have been touched by the culture, because I think there's something so unique and special about it that everybody else, no one will get it. No one gets it. The hardcore scene is so interesting, and I love it.
Totally.
And I think about it and go, God, I think I would just be a big nerd.
Oh yeah. Who knows?
Like a big nerd loser. That would be like. Oh
yeah.
Oh.
So when did the idea of wanting to play in band? Because did you play?
Yeah. So I always wanted to play music. I played in a punk band in Salt Lake called Thought Police, and they were really good.
Thought Police?
The Thought Police.
Oh, the Thought Police. Yeah, from 1984. Sure.
So and they were really. It was pissed. It was my friend Josh and my friend Sean. And
you played drums?
I played drums. Yeah. Okay. And I just loved punk rock. Like, I just really thought it was awesome.
Sure.
When I was like a drunk, and then when I got like. I think when I got sober, I was like, I was really intrigued by the sound of some of the hardcore bands that I was hearing.
Yeah,
and the first record that I bought the Acme record.
Sure.
And then I bought Bloodlet's Eclectic, and then I bought Dead Guys Fixation on a Coworker.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking like, and I bought a bunch of old Integrity stuff. I bought one of Refused's old records.
Sure.
Super fast, and I remember just trying to think, and Warzone and Cause for Alarm, and I remember thinking, I like the punk rock stuff like a lot, but there was something about the tone and like the slowness of it and the metalness of it that I was like, I think I like that.
Right.
So I played punk rock, and then was actually in a vegan like punk rock band in Salt Lake called the Teen Tragedies.
Okay.
And Kelly Green, who was the lead singer, actually ended up playing in, I think, the funny one.
Good Clean Fun.
Good Clean Fun. She ended up playing Good Clean Fun later.
Oh, okay.
But it was like, she was just in this punk rock band, and I just wanted to play music.
Sure.
And it was really easy, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And
Right.
You know, we put like a demo or something, and I left.
Yeah.
But I ended up helping. I was one of the founding members of Cherem, which was like a vegan straight edge band that we started with my friend Bill French and my friend Jesse Linmore.
Mm-hmm.
And originally my friend Harold, who's like a radical like animal rights activist dude.
Okay.
And just he was awesome. He wasn't straight edge, and I was so like militant at that point that I was like, I don't want to be in a band with him because I didn't have friends that weren't vegan
or straight edge.
Vegan straight edge.
Yeah. They needed to have both the quantifiers. Yeah.
Or either or. When I just didn't want people around me that did drugs and smoked and stuff. I just didn't want to do it. And I was it was a dick move, but at the same time it was like it
was what you needed.
It's where I was, and
right.
I kind of regretted treating him. I didn't treat him poorly, but I was like, I don't want to be in a band with him because he smokes. I know he's like super rad. But Bill started playing guitar and singing, and he was yelling, and I was like, Bill, you need to sing.
Yeah.
And so our first show was on my birthday, and I played drums. Jesse played bass. Bill played guitar. Trevor, my friend Trevor Hale, who played in Tamerlane, and I think he played in Aftermath of a Trainwreck. He played in like every band.
Sure.
He played guitar, and then Bill played guitar and sang. And I remember it was the funnest show because it was just like a mosh band. Like,
Sure.
So we did that for a while, and then when I moved to Redlands, they broke up for a season, and then they reformed as the more popular kind of version. Like they got a bit bigger,
right?
In the early 2003, 2004, 2005 series, and it was Clint played drums and Bill played and Trevor played, and I think there's a couple other people, but they put out a full length and went on tour and did a bunch of stuff, and they actually got voted in Salt Lake one of the best bands in Salt Lake City, which was really cool. Yeah. So I got to help be a part of that. But really, my friend Adam and I booked shows, and there was a bunch of drama because a dude that was a promoter there had ratted on a couple of friends of mine, and they ended up spending some time in jail.
Okay.
And so we started a production company called Burn the Rat, and that was like our deal. So we booked shows for a while.
Right.
Like that was my favorite time because I played in the band, but really we kind of helped it limp through a season where there was the same 40 kids at every show.
Right.
No one was coming to shows.
Right. There wasn't new blood that was coming in. Right.
No, and it was like it just wasn't happening.
Sure.
So we just kept going, and we were like the 50 straight edge kids that actually cared. And kept going. And it was like it was just lame to some, but I thought it was just amazing. It was like so much fun to be a part of it. So that was Cherem, and then when I moved to California, Eric Gregson, who had become a friend, a couple years before, he was like, "Come out and be in a band with me, and like let's do a band." And so we started.
So he extended the invitation to you to come to California, and then that's why you came. I wanted
to come to Redlands because I'd come out. I was supposed to live out here. You know, I moved out the day after I graduated high school. I moved to Redlands.
Okay.
And I drove.
Because you were living with your mom the entire time for a majority of the time. I know you were. Splitting.
I left my junior year in high school.
Okay.
And moved in with my girlfriend and graduated high school on my own. And
at least you graduated high school.
Yeah.
I mean there's
graduated early. It was good. I did my thing. I'm not stupid. I just was a dummy. So I should have just stayed home. But so I met Eric through the scene, and then he just was like, "I feel like you're supposed to come out with me." So I basically moved out to Redlands with him.
Okay.
The day after I graduated high school.
Got it.
And then ended up in this insane affair with this dude's wife.
Okay. Out here in California.
Out here in California. She was from Salt Lake.
Okay.
So I went back to Salt Lake with her. All my stuff was in Redlands. Went back to Salt Lake.
Okay.
And then
with the intention that you were going to be with her, like she was going to, or you were just there was the only intention.
No idea.
Right. The only intention was that I want to be.
Oh my God! What am I doing?
Sure.
Oh my God! What am I doing? And then the dude died.
Oh wow!
Her partner died, and so that spun her out pretty hard. And he, in his suicide letter, he asked me to stick around and take care of her.
Oh my God!
So that was kind of like the journey of like, we have to keep this relationship secret. We're the worst human beings on the planet. Like,
sure.
So that was like the real like
the sobering moment.
That this insane thing where everything shifted for me. A week out of high school, I'm this dude that I feel like I've killed this guy.
Right.
And he doesn't even know.
Right.
And I've got all these secrets, and like all this stuff starts imploding on me. So we lived together for a while, and then I just remember that we ended up staying together.
Yeah.
We ended up moving out to California.
Okay.
And then what ended up happening was like we got married. Me and that girl
got
married, and then we were just broken, you know. So I get it. I'm grateful.
Right,
I'm totally
right.
grateful. But she ended up falling in love with one of my friends out here.
Okay.
So she ended up like cheating
Double rape.
on me with him
When your relationship was started.
And I was like,
yeah.
we had like our little girl, like we had this stuff, and I remember that was when I really that was when everything kind of came apart, and I remember that's when I really felt like this God thing happened.
Of course.
So it was this weird journey where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's this kind of insane.
No, yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
when I moved out here, I was doing band with Eric, and in the
Sure.
midst of it, all this stuff started happening. So he wanted me to be in a band with him and his brother. It was me. I was going to play drums. He was going to do guitar and sing or something, and his brother
Sure.
Ryan was going to play guitar.
Okay.
Well, then there's all these young kids from Redlands, and Eric, being Eric, was like, let's get everyone together and be in a band. So we started this band called Death Star, and there's
Right.
4 singers, and
Of
it's
course.
like,
Right.
And I started singing because I just wanted to sing. And I never sang. So I was like, yeah, let's sing. So I started singing,
You're like,
and they're
I'm
like,
loud, I'm enthusiastic,
they're
I can
like, yeah,
do
let's
this.
do this. So we start Death Star, and I just got to be one of the vocalists.
Right.
And so then that band ended up launching with more favor than any other project Eric had ever done.
Oh, for sure.
Because we did like this whole thing of like
It was
releasing the
lit.
demo and all this pomp and like hype, and no one had even heard the band.
No,
we
not at
showed
all.
up, and all these kids just went bananas, and we were
Right.
like, it worked! Like,
Right.
But that night, I played with my band. I opened for Death Star in a band called Man vs. Grizzly.
Okay.
And I played drums in Man vs. Grizzly, and the
Okay.
singer was the dude that was my friend that was sleeping with my wife. And so it was the worst night of my life, because I'm like watching my wife watch my dude.
Right.
And be glad to be there for him, and I'm like, I loved the band. It was almost like Every Time I Die, or like,
Okay.
kind of almost like Green Day or so. I really felt like at that point we could have been on like TRL.
Sure.
It was like
Yeah.
hardcore rock and roll.
Right,
It was
right,
so
right.
good. I had so much fun playing it, and he was
Sure.
total like punk rock. Like we'd smash stuff. I mean, I was just like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But I was like miserable. And then we
Sure.
play our first show. It was Donnybrook's first show too.
Okay, yeah.
So it was like the showcase, and I remember just thinking, this is the worst night of my entire life. Like, I hate it. And Death Star blew up, and that was like the biggest thing we'd ever been a part of. So Eric's other band that I was supposed to be a part of
Right.
never took off because
he had to
Star
focus
blew
on
up.
Death
Yeah.
Star.
And so so then all this stuff falls apart in my personal life, and I've got this little girl, and we go through this thing. I end up getting really kind of lit in a faith journey, and I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. And so I want to take good care of my daughter. I really want my wife to pick me again.
Right.
So I like waited for her.
Okay.
And I because I'd been that dude.
Sure.
So I went to him and was like, dude, I know what you're going through.
Right.
Please don't. Like,
Right.
please don't.
Sure.
And he just couldn't hear me.
Wow.
They were just in love.
That's like that you had the courage to go up to the person. Because I mean, that's
Because when I went through it, dog, like,
Yeah.
this, I'm reading the Bible. It's like, treat other people like you wish you could have been treated.
Of course.
When I went through that betrayal, I almost got stabbed at a movie theater because people thought I did what I did.
okay.
So all these dudes that were friends with him showed up, and they were like, "Hey, man," and I'm like, "Oh," and I lied my
Of
way
course.
out of it.
Well, you don't want to get
Terrified because
stabbed,
there's, like,
right?
A ton of them, and they're bad people. Like, they're the bad people. They're older than me.
Yeah.
Tattoos, and I'm like, "Oh God!" I have
Yeah.
like a can of mace and my knuckles in my front hood pocket. And I'm like, "Oh!" I walk up and they're like, "Get your hands out of your pocket." I'm like, "Yes, sir."
Yeah.
Like, so bummed. Like, "Oh God, they're
man.
gonna kill me!" Oh,
Right,
God.
right.
And my hand, I'm like shaking. It was the first time just terror. Just
course.
so afraid. So, and they're like, "I know you're gonna talk about it, like whatever." So I'm like,
Yeah.
days later, my girl, she finds out about it. She's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, "I'm not a fucking rat, dude. I'm not going to say a thing."
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I almost got like killed for it, and I deserved it.
Right.
I was caught.
Sure.
Like, so exposed. Like,
Right.
just so, it was like the worst thing. So when that happens with my dude, I'm like, I will not do that to him because all it does is put terror on you. You can't even change.
No.
And so I'm like, well, if you're supposed to love your enemy, if you're supposed to treat people with love,
Yeah.
I gotta love them. That's what I gotta do to
Sure.
see if this is even real.
Right.
So I start doing that, and all my Christian friends are like, I don't know what you're doing. How are you doing this? And I remembered that there was a reality that set in of like, if God is love,
Yeah. This needs to
then we
pour
love.
out.
This
Right.
is
Right.
what it is. And so I tried so hard to be like his friend. I tried to stay and wait. I wanted to be awesome, so she picked me because like I
Yeah.
thought I was awesome,
Right,
and he
right, right.
sucked.
Right.
Don't pick him. Pick
Right.
me. I'm awesome.
Yeah. We
And, like,
already have this
we
thing
already have
together.
this thing. It's so easy. The minute you go, I'm in, I'll be like, it is forgiven. Everything's
that's
good.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're home. Didn't happen. Waited
Right.
for like 11 months.
Just yeah. You
Living
put
on
in
Joshua
the work.
Island's couch, like moving on people, staying in my back room
Right.
of my own house. While it's just
Yeah.
just
Just
trying to be there
piece
for my
things.
kid,
Right.
trying to be there for my ex, like wanting to be there. So that was kind of that journey of, in the midst of that, Death Star happened, and then we went to Hellfest in 2004.
Yep.
And on the way home, it was such a disaster for my ex. it just wasn't going to work. Then on the way home, I was like, I can't be a part of it.
I got to move on. Yeah.
I got to just be a dad and I'll hang out.
Right.
And so he let me be on a ton of projects because we're dear friends. And so if they need an extra recording, like they did that recording Aftermath. Every record they did, I helped on because I was available. I just couldn't be in a band.
Right.
So I kind of like let go of that. And I started this Bible study that turned into a church in Redlands called Tithemy. And then we started doing shows there. And it just became this...
It built from there, yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing that and being a dad. And that's where I was. And Death Star was kind of going through their own thing and doing their stuff. And then my friend Corey and my other friend Travis hit me up and were like, hey, we want to start a band and we'd like you to sing. And I was like, well, I'm only going to talk about Jesus. That's all I really care about. And they're like, that's fine. So they started this band and that was the beginning of Sleeping Giant. And we just played at Tiffany all the time and practiced there because that's where we had the spot.
Right. The interesting thing that one of my favorite stories that's ever been shared to me, especially in regards to Christian music in general. Yeah. One of my friends, he worked at Tooth and Nail for years and years and years. Yeah. Did like A&R for him. And this is like when MXPX was at its height. So you have people who are, they're appealing obviously to a much, a secular market as well. But so they would get like handwritten letters to the label saying MXPX, Mike Herrera, like spit on stage. That wasn't a Christian thing to do.
Not a Christian thing to do.
And like the concept of like what Christian music is and it is such an impenetrable task to be like, if you advertise yourself as a Christian band and like are doing that, it is so hard to get people to pay attention to it in the outside world. Just be like, oh, I can't get past that banner
thing.
Yeah.
It's real.
And even people like obviously on the flip side, I always remember like I remember Taken played a show with that. God, was it? It was a Born Blind. They were from San Diego. I think they're whatever Christian hardcore band. And I remember playing a show with them at Chain and having kids come up to me because I always like to sell the merch and be like, "So are you guys saved? Are you?" And I was like, "What? Well, like, what are you? Yeah,
what are you talking about?"
I was like, "That's a prerequisite for you. Like, did you like us? Like, did you like us playing? Like, and it was
I'll like it if you were saved,
right? And it was such a. I mean, and the like when you started Sleeping Giant, did you have all those things in your head?
This is where I was at.
Yeah.
I got saved.
Right.
I got like saved. I really feel like I was in like a burning car.
Right.
And I got like rescued. It was bad. It sucked.
Well, everything you described, I don't think people would disagree with that.
No, that's the part. It's like there's a song, like an old song that the King David wrote, and he's like, I was in a pit and you found me. Sure. I really felt like that.
Right.
So I get like saved.
Right.
I'm grateful. I'm like, God is real.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm so in. Whatever you want. And I show up to the hardcore scene, and all these kids are not talking about their faith. They're just Christians in a band. And it was the weakest crap I've ever seen. And I was like, I cannot believe this dude, if he saved your life like he saved mine, and you're not talking about him, then screw you. Put that mic down and get out of here. Because I needed help, not that.
Yeah.
And I told all my friends in Redlands, I was like, straight edge isn't going to save me. Veganism isn't going to save me. My life is falling apart. I need God. And they were like, okay. And I was like, will you come over to my house and like, let's just have a Bible study in my living room and like, let's just get together. Because we weren't really going to church anywhere. Sure. And I was like the newbie, but I'm like, we need it. We need God.
I need community.
We need God bad. And so we had a swear counter. I was so unrefined that they would like count how many times I would say a swear word, and like Joshie Highland I think it was like 27 was like the record. It was just like bad, but we were in. So then we started this band eventually, and I'm like, I'm going to be about it because it's been a long time since someone just stood on stage and was like, I am about this.
Right.
And I remember that it was like the minute we started talking for real.
Yeah.
It was on, and I remember that it marked a shift for a season where it was like. The days of like cowering behind your instruments and like if anything would be and like walking off, that was done. It was like, that's not real. Like, don't say that. Like, don't do that because I felt so charged that like, I'm going to be about it.
You wanted to make a definitive
Christian
statement.
Band. We are a Christian band, and if our behavior is so horrible and our love for people is so messed up that you don't like Jesus, like that's going to be on us. But like, we're not going to hide in the music. We couldn't do it. Because when I really watch people as a non-believer at Showcase, I remember watching NIV and Throwdown and Wrench and God, there was another one. And I remember sitting back and watching all these Christian kids. Yeah. And I remember literally not being a Christian kid and just being like, these dudes are such punks, dude. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe him. I believed NIV. Like I believed in Jason. I believed in Kyle. I believed in JD. Like I believed in Corey. I knew them, and I was like, I know they're real. Like I knew it.
Right.
But all these other kids, I was just like, you guys are punks. You would not last a second. Like get out of here. So then I get saved, and I realize these are my people.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I can't. Like I'm in. You guys are my fam, but like you got to pull it together. Because this whole thing of hiding is not going to happen. Like, it isn't going to happen. If I'm in the room, we need to talk about what's real. And what's real is you got saved. And you better tell people. Because there's people that are hiding and they're afraid. And they need help. And they don't need you to front. Like, you better be about it. And so it was different. And I know it gave permission for people to act stupid and some people to not be sincere. And they use it as a shtick. And it becomes like the thing.
It's a selling point.
And that's the part where it's like, it's not a selling point for me. And it wasn't at the beginning. And it won't be. Even when it's unpopular, even when the wave starts crashing and then people start getting pissed at God again and it becomes this big deal, I'll still be there being like, I love Jesus and I don't care if you have a problem with it. Because I didn't have a problem. I don't care. Like, so that's how I felt for the whole time. So I knew that there was all that stigma. I felt like I was supposed to actually minister more to the scene in Southern California because I felt like that was what called me out. Eric was a Christian kid that was like, come man. But they listened to One Life Crew and like Marauder and they listened to all the East Coast bands when everyone else was like into other stuff. And I remember thinking, oh, you guys are like real hardcore kids, but you love Jesus. All right, I could deal with that. Like, we'll just hang out.
Well, because you always feel too like there's definitive lines that are drawn with like what you obviously can and can't do from that perspective. And so then there's that when you're caught off guard from a person who's just like, oh, like you can't do those things because you are this. And then like when you subvert that and people are like, wait a minute, like you're allowed to do that? It's like, well, yeah,
that's what we do. I think that's what one of my favorite bands is, The Chariot, and that's what I think I love the most about them is people talk like I talk, they just do it. They just model freedom, and it just infuriates some people, and it's awesome. And I'm like, you guys just show people what freedom is. And I love it. That's what they go for, you know.
Sure.
And it's so spontaneous because even like Wolf, like he never danced like that until he was in that band. He never played the bass like that. But when it just started happening for him, and that's what was authentic for him. And like it wasn't a stick. And if they got another bass player before they were done, you know, and he did all the same stuff, that would be cheesy. But like that was real. And so I love that where it's like that's authentic. And so what's authentic for me is sharing a message because I think I'm a preacher. That's like what I am. So I'm like, okay.
And so the obviously, like you were mentioning before, the fact that you do missionary work and ministry and all that sort of stuff. Do you feel because there also is that within the Christianity faith in general, like the you being in a band and like being a loud screamer and like all those connotations that people don't necessarily equate to the Christian faith. Like, have you had to battle those notions with people being like, that's you're weird. What do you got all those tattoos for? Like,
I think people. Here's what I think. I think other people had that. I think the generation before us had that.
Sure.
I think because we're so outspoken, because we actually do ministry, and because we've shown up to Christian festivals and done what we were supposed to do in the face of all this performance garbage, people are like... And so we don't get that. People are like, what do you think about blah, blah? We're just like, don't even bring that here. Like, and I was talking to Eric about it. My friend John is a teacher. He owns a Bible school and stuff, and he was talking about different phases of culture. And he said there's high culture and pop culture, and then folk culture. And he said high culture is like that academic royalty thing where they just have resources. They eat whatever their chef brings them. Pop culture is like McDonald's. In our case, it would be like Chipotle. And then folk culture is like we eat a lot of hummus and we do home birth and like whatever. And I realized that the hardcore scene is like a folk culture, except we're getting bastardized into pop culture really fast. So I think there's pop culture Christianity. And they're drawing a lot because they see the sincerity of even Christian hardcore. And so we don't get fronted on by dumb people because they're like, what are you doing? It's like, what are you doing?
You can turn the mirror on them.
They just don't bring it to us. They might bring it to other little 15-year-old kids that look afraid, but I'm not. And so it's like we're not stupid. We've been in this swinging for a while, so like
you can look at our body of work and see that we've been.
And that's the part. That's what Eric always says. Like a good tree doesn't make bad fruit, And he's like, even in Christian culture, if people are hearing the message of Jesus and they're responding, if sick people are being prayed for and ministered to, if hurting people are being touched and they're being comforted, is that good fruit or bad fruit? Because that's what we look at.
Right.
A good tree doesn't make bad fruit, and a bad tree doesn't make good fruit.
Yeah.
So just look at our fruit.
Right. Look at our fruit and see what we've
That's
done.
what we're about.
The last thing I want to hit on was the, once Sleeping Giant obviously started to make a definitive move towards, playing, like you were joking about earlier, playing with, satanic metal bands or whatever. Like playing to people who clearly were going to be very adverse to what you would
hate it.
Right. And so, like, do you, I mean, when you guys first started doing that, I'm sure it was, like, a level of, like, oh, we got it. Like, the water has to find its own level. Like, what am I comfortable with? Talk to me about that experience of just, like, pushing yourselves out there to being, like, we're not going to be that band that's just going to tour churches, like, 7 months out of the year.
We're just hardcore kids, man. You don't do that. Like, in our culture, right? Like, everybody plays with everybody.
Right.
Like, no. That's the dumbest thing. Now that's, like, marketing.
Yeah.
That's stupid. That's not the hardcore scene at all. And so we were informed by the hardcore scene. We've been part of the hardcore scene for a long time. So we play shows.
Right. We don't play instant adjective here.
And we get it. I'm grateful that we got to be on like the initial year of Scream the Prayer. We got to help like kind of formulate this tour. We've been a part of that. That's cool. But then we tour with other people, like because we're a hardcore band. And in terms of like our ethic, and even playing shows in Southern California, I just remember that Corey and T and JR and Jeff, they were just like, go. So we showed up and I'm like, hey, this song's about this and that's what this is about. And here we go. And it was like, no question. I'm going to do what I would do anyway. From the very beginning, it was like, I'm going to tell you about my life. I'm going to share this song. This song's about my life. My faith is about my life. This song's about my faith. You need to know. Here's my faith. Right. You should respond. I promise it's real. Come on. And then kids started like, oh crap, this is real. Like, and I'm like, yeah. So there was no like, what I told them was, I'm going to tell people about Jesus. And they were like, good.
Okay.
And that was it. So I just kept doing what I was doing each week as like a pastor, but I was just doing it on stage.
Sure. What was the funniest interaction you had from just like an audience, like not on board with anything, like whether it was a specific tour, not so much from like a band perspective where it's like, oh, we toured with this band and they sucked because their audience was terrible.
I just remember...
like the roughest reactions that you had where it was like, wow, this is...
I'm going to share this one.
Okay.
I was at a Christian festival.
Okay.
And I got a bottle of piss thrown on me.
That's pretty...
We started, it was like the first song we started with.
Sure.
And I remember like kneeling down and I remember we started playing this song and I just remember seeing this kid walk up. I don't really talk about it very much, but he had like a bottle like this and I remember watching him like grab it and he just went like, like all over me and then threw the bottle at me. And I remember it hit me in the face, and I remember thinking, that's piss.
That's piss.
And I had my eyes closed, and I remember I started kind of crying, and I remember the Lord going like, in my heart almost like, just keep going, it's going to be okay. And I like kept going, and it was this insane show. Insane show. I mean, just incredible. And there was like thousands of kids there, and it was like tons of crazy stuff popped off, and it was awesome, and no one knew.
It was just like this
just
single
this thing that happened, and I remember just thinking, I can't believe. So we played the next day with For Today.
Okay.
Like For Today played the next night, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna wait and see if Maddie gets pissed thrown on him because everyone says we're like the same. Like, and it didn't happen. And I remember watching him and just going like, maybe that just happened because I'm a dick. I was like, God, I don't want to pretend to be like I was persecuted. Maybe that guy just thought I was an a-hole and like didn't like me.
Did not like me.
I don't want to read into it. So that, anyways, the next day before that show, I spent like an hour and a half in like this porta potty at this festival, sitting there like crying, like God, did I mess up? If I messed up, is it bad or was that good? Like, I don't mind. I'll get slammed for you all the time. I don't care. They can beat me up. Like, we've played shows in places and people are like, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, no, I have the mic. I didn't come all the way from my hot wife and kids to get here and act like a coward. I'm going to tell you what I think. You got a problem with it? I'll be over there. And like, I run off the stage waiting for someone to run up on me and be like, no. I'll be like, please hit me because I'm a Christian. Just hit me. Just please do
this
it.
Is where we're
stand right here. Just go ahead. Just watch. And like, it's never happened. But that was the weirdest one. So then I went back to the merch tent. And I walk up and I'd really forgiven the kid. In my heart, I was like, I released that kid. There's nothing he could say to make it better. Obviously, that was like his deal. And it's cool. Like, I please bless that kid. Like, walk into the merch tent. And this girl's like, I know who threw piss all over you last night. And I'm like, I don't want to know. And I walked away. I just was like, I don't even want to know because I don't want to bring it up. I'm done. I'm done.
We've already moved.
I've been through this for an hour. I'm over it. Like, Yes, he threw piss all over my Gorilla Biscuits shirt. God, why do you do that? Like, and so then I leave and I come back and I'm like looking at Eric and I'm like, should I have asked who that was? And he's like, I did. I got it. No worries. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I would be a horrible friend if I let that happen and didn't do something. And I'm like, no, dude, don't even worry.
Yeah, don't.
Please just don't. Like, let's just not.
Right.
So that night I'm watching For Today's Set. It doesn't happen. And I'm like, oh, man. And then I look right and Eric and like a bunch of our friends are walking with this kid towards me. And I'm like in this conversation. I look right and it's just like this little like skinhead kid. And I'm like,
oh, that's him.
No. And he walks up to me and I'm like, hey, man. And he's like, hey, dude, I just wanted to say I was sorry for throwing piss on you, man. Like, and I'm like, dude, no, don't even worry about it. Like, thank you for apologizing. Like, you're so good. Don't even worry. And he's like, don't, dude. Like, and then he goes to start saying, because me and my friends just talk crap on you all the time. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I'm good.
I don't need a backstory.
I don't need to know any of the backstory. Like, it's cool, dude. Like, I thank you for apologizing. Like, don't worry.
Right.
Please don't worry about it.
Right.
And so he walked away. Anyways, and then all these dudes are talking to him and, whatever. And I'm just like,
yeah. We've done my part. Yeah.
In terms of like hostile crowds, there's the dude that has literally been screaming like, "I'll fuck you up," and I'm like, I will be right over there. And I literally like, there's been a couple sets where I've like, stop. Hey, what's up, Sleeping Giant? Thanks so much. Throwing the mic down, run over, and just waited for him. Like, come on. Because if you're going to beat me up for my faith, I'm not fighting back. Like, I just don't even need to. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be awesome. Yeah. You might actually meet Jesus if that happens. Because you'll be blown away that you're slugging a dude that's like not going to fight, not doing anything. Back. I just don't have any, not my deal. So it's never happened. Like, whenever it's gone there, it's been like weird. People are like, I shared a song about my daughter from the first record, and some dude was like, shut the fuck up. And I was like, don't you ever say that to me when I'm talking about my kid ever again. And he was like, and so at the end of the night, I saw him and I walked up on him and I was like, we were in Northern California. I just walked up on him and I'm like, tell me to shut the fuck up right now.
Right.
Tell me now that I'm just standing.
No one would ever do that.
And he was like, no, dude, it's like, this is like a metal show. And I'm like, I'm not a metal kid, man. Like, I was so pissed. Like, that's a song about my little girl, man. Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, no, dude, I just, And so that's like, and I kind of felt like, I even went away feeling like I blew that. Because I challenged him, but it was just that thing of like, people need to understand, like, this is real stuff. So if we're going to do it, that's fine. Like, if people are going to do that, then it either says in respect, then you respect that space, or if you're going to challenge it in respect, it's like, back it up.
Right.
Because if it's about faith, you win. You can stab me to death.
Right.
If it's about you being a dick to someone else, then I need to challenge you because that's not love, and I wouldn't treat you like that.
Of course,
you know? So you could be on stage being like, God's a liar, and we played these fests, and Behemoth's ripping up a Bible and throwing it on stage. I'm like, okay, here we are. This is good. So it's like, I get it, but that's the strongest one, the weirdest one. I don't normally share that story, but well, that was the most intriguing. Where I was like, wow, it happened in a Christian fest.
Right? Yeah, you're like that. This is ironic, as they would say.
That's interesting. Wow.
Well, we can't top a piss story, so I'm going to end that right here. But thank you very much for hanging out, and I appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for listening.
All right, so there was Tommy, and like I said, regardless of what your personal stance is on religion and afterlife and all that stuff, a great conversation, right? Good dude, good head and his shoulders, doing the thing, doing what he believes in, and that's awesome. That's all you can really ask for in your own personal life. Just find something, hold on to it, and keep getting better at it. So, propertyofzach.com, the editor for this episode, Tom Richfield, killing it as always. And if you want to get in touch with the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. It's episode 100 next week. Little tease, Jordan, the vocalist of La Dispute, he will be on. He is our 100th episode guest, and some crazy announcements are going to happen that day. So, boom. I'll talk to you then.
Get through!